Welcome to the Story of the Week podcast. This is the supplemental podcast to the supplemental podcast that goes along with the weekly morning newscast we call Things You Might Have Heard, which is produced by the Conversation Project, and that's all part of the More Better Media umbrella. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne, and what I'm going to give to you in this podcast is a deeper dive into one of the stories that you picked out of our feeds that we do for our morning shows, produce the supplemental podcast, which is the weekly wrap up. Of course, that is the 10 stories of the week that you tell us are the most engaging via Facebook and Twitter. There's a simpler way to say that, but we'll get to that later. We post these stories every day, all day long, about every 50 minutes with a new story on the feeds on Facebook and Twitter. And you get to engage in the stories to give us what we have for our daily morning show. And for the end of the week, we take the pure raw data and we give you the top 10 stories per exactly what you said. Throughout the week, we do a bit of editorializing and picking the stories that fit the narrative. We narrow this down to just those 10 stories that are there. These are the top 10 stories that you picked out as most conversational for the week ending July 22nd, 2022. And this is the order as they go from top to bottom, from 1 to 10, if you will. Story number 1 is the headline, the big, most important story per you this week, was the headline that read, Miranda Lambert stops concert to call out a group of girls for being more worried about taking selfies than watching the show. Number 2 story, Carlee Russell found, missing Hoover, Alabama woman returns home. And number 3, Iceland's Mount Fjarðarfjörður, which I totally butcher each time we say that, but you guys wanted to talk about it. That volcano closed due to health hazards from eruption. As I said, number 3. Number 4 story, a year after the launch of 988, advocates say it's saving lives. And number 5, Rex Heuermann arrested in Gilgo Beach serial killings. Number 6 gives us Georgia Supreme Court rules against Trump's efforts to block election probe grand jury. And number 7, Johnny Bench apologizes for anti-Semitic joke at Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame induction. Number 8, 7.2 magnitude earthquake strikes near Alaska Peninsula, prompting brief tsunami warning. The number 9 story is Kelsey Ballerini dump Reddit to protect her mental health. And number 10, Carlos Alcaraz wins Wimbledon, denies Novak Djokovic record 24th Grand Slam single title. For this week, the top story that I thought was top or worth talking about had me the story with the headline at number 2. And that headline, of course, read, Carlee Russell found, missing Hoover, Alabama woman returns home. So we're going to get into deeper detail to that one. What I think about it, what I shouldn't think about it, but I do, and how this affects literally everyone out there in dealing with missing persons and just mental health. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Quick reminder that our main website, thisisaconversationproject.com, is where we house all the work we do for all of our Conversation Project work. That's our daily offering, which is Things You Might Have Heard. That's our weekend offerings, which are the weekly wrap-up and this thing here. Links to all our feeds and everywhere we are, including all the videos on TikTok and YouTube and things like that. And, of course, the quick promotion part, where we have a list of our sponsors and our partnership page so that you can help us keep things going here. All that found at thisisaconversationproject.com. So with that all said, let's get into what we're here for, and that is discussion on Carlee Russell and her very strange, odd journey of the weekend and her very strange, odd information dump for the week, and how it affects us all, and how we really do need to be thinking thoughts and prayers, positive thoughts to Carlee Russell, and can also still be more than a bit upset with the action she's pulled. Let's start with the simple part of what we had when we posted the news story. Carleetha Nicole Russell, her full given name, taken to UAB hospital for evaluation after returning home on foot, according to police, on Saturday night. We posted the story on Sunday the 16th, so this is when it happened, Saturday overnight, and we started to wonder what happened about her. In fact, Monday, we were hoping for some resolution to figure out what happened and how things are going, and hopefully she's doing well. What started the whole ordeal was on Thursday prior. Russell called 911 after she saw a toddler walking along Interstate 459 South and called a family member to tell them about the situation. The family member, I think, was her brother's girlfriend or so. The family member lost contact with her, but the line remained open. Essentially, she was on the phone with Russell, and then there were screams, and then the phone drops, and then there's nothing. So Russell got off work at 8:20 on Thursday, stopped by to pick up food before traveling towards Hoover on I-49. She stopped there, allegedly seeing a toddler walking across the interstate or walking around the interstate. She called 911. And then she called her friend saying, hey, this thing is happening right now. And then, of course, the disappearance thing. We got to the police got to the car, found no one there, found most of her belongings there, and could not find her. This turned into a missing persons case where her name, her face, her likeness was all over the place from Thursday until Saturday when we found out she was found and returned home, but did not get a lot of really good details on what happened. Monday, we have the story in the things you might have heard, and we're saying we're hoping for more details on what's going on because we had all Sunday and got nothing from what happened. They didn't take long to get there, about 5 minutes from dispatch before things were there, and all her stuff was there in the vehicle. The vehicle was still running, I believe, going forward. And, they notated her wig was there, her cell phone was there, her purse was there, her Apple Watch was there. Essentially, if she were kidnapped, no one wanted her to be tracked, so all her electronic devices were taken. A purse was, or left, I should say. Her purse was left there, so nothing could be found, and the wig was probably lost in the struggle. Then we got some information. Then we got a news conference. Then we got a whole lot of BS, to be honest. We found out that Miss Russell did a lot of weird stuff prior to making that call on Thursday night. Details arrived come Wednesday a few days prior to today, not prior to the actual act, of course. And things were really, really odd. Some details that were released by the authorities include the fact that she actually left work with a robe and toilet paper concealed somewhere. She was hiding the fact that she was leaving with a robe and toilet paper. She took a 600-yard ride while on the phone with 911, following an apparently barefoot toddler on the side of the road. So if she's walking down the road watching a toddler, she's driving actually in the car for 600 yards. That's a pretty long walk for a very short 911 call based on GPS coordinates from the phone call that she was talking to the toddler and trying to adjust with that. She searched online for a bunch of weird things, including, do you have to pay for a Amber Alert? And about the film Taken. Also, she bought a bunch of snacks prior, which isn't odd, but those snacks that she bought, because, they take her credit card receipts, weren't in the car. It's as if she was kidnapped and they decided to take the snacks along with her and other things that she had bought that day. Hoover Police Chief Nicholas Durzis seemed to cast a lot of doubt on the story that she gave and about her 49-hour disappearance beginning the week prior. A lot of people gave a lot of kind of side eye to what exactly happened. And at the time on Wednesday, they stated they needed to speak to her again to sort of get some sentiments of just trying to figure out what was going on. Of course, she claimed she was forced into her car. The next thing she knew, she was in the back of a trailer 18-wheeler. This was all essentially a kidnapping, a setup, a weird thing situation that we didn't really understand. Now, we kind of get right now that this didn't necessarily happen the way it happened. A report coming from another local news source asked Eric Guster, who was a Birmingham attorney, about what could be going down for Carlee Russell now, because it seems like she's in pretty deep doo-doo at this point. Some things he said is, number one, she says she's kidnapped. That didn't happen. That's a false report. She said there's a toddler on the road unsafe. That didn't happen. That's a false report. She wasted time and money on law enforcement and concerned citizens in the community to look for a person, two people specifically, her and a lost toddler. Those are pretty bad things. As you can see, many people are unhappy because people who are actually in danger, people actually deal with someone who is missing and may be found later or sometimes not found at all, aren't too appreciative of time, money, resources being spent on missing people who aren't actually missing. And to be very frank and very honest, Carlee Russell, a young black woman, and the reports of young black women dealing with being kidnapped, abducting, disappearing, not being found, usually don't get the coverage that she actually got. And it's not necessarily because all of a sudden they decided this was a great one to cover. It just sort of happened. The story was just so sort of out there, much like the story of Taken that she was searching, that it picked up people's attention, and it would have been a feel-good story once we found out about it. A toddler wandering around the street, a young lady picked up trying to assist a toddler, and what happened to them. And the fact that she just literally just showed up 2 days later at home. Many people are speaking to what's happening, including her parents, who are just at the original part. It was a lot of folks saying, hey, it was a kidnapping. It was a thing. We're going to handle this. And then as the details that went through on the actual setup shows, it was essentially a hoax. Now, let me say this. We don't know the full story yet because she has not come out to say anything. Her parents have spoken. Her boyfriend has spoken. The police have spoken. But as we said earlier, the police have not spoken to Carlee Russell, and Carlee Russell has not spoken to the public to make a plea of apology or a plea to believe her. At this point, no one believes her. To the surprise of no one, she's been attacked. And to the surprise of no one, Black Twitter is doing a lot of the attacking. If you don't understand Black Twitter, it's not a real place. It's just essentially Black people responding on Twitter about things in I say O-U-R because I'm Black and I'm on Twitter, in our community, and things that just don't quite add up. So oftentimes you hear a lot of bitching, complaining about Black Twitter, jumping on things because it's what it is. This is one where they jumped on things because it is what it is. And essentially, as I stated earlier, Black women have a tendency to not be looked for when they disappear. Black folks on Twitter were not so happy to have this happen and let Carlee Russell know that this was not the way to work. It was also mixed in with a lot of thoughts on mental health and what she was looking for and what attention she was looking for to get. And while we do need to sort of take that into account. And earlier on, it was, wow, this is a sad story. Let's find this young lady, until we found out that she wasn't actually really lost. She was just, we don't really know. That's the main problem. We don't really know what's going on. So until you get that finality to know where she was, what she did, why she did this, was there help going on there? Is the family or the boyfriend or some friends, are they involved in this in the hoax? Why was this thing done? What was the actual end game for this one? Until we get something like that, you can't really close the books on the whole situation. But you can have plenty of rumor and innuendo and just understand that a lady who had a serious need to get some attention went very, 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 very deep to get some attention, gained national attention, and it seems like apparently the end game that she was expecting wasn't going to play out. So she just came home. It didn't have any way out of it. The only way out was to basically come home and not even come clean yet. Just come home and just go back to life and whatever. I'm sure she hadn't been back to work. I don't know what she was escaping, what she was running away from, and how she thought this was going to help. Obviously, at this point, ain't helping nobody. So let's start first with the reality that is missing people. I have talked multiple occasions for all the time I've been doing journalism, literally from actually working with journalists and working and producing things for real broadcasts to my independent broadcasts and stuff, blogs and postings and videos. And since we revived this thing here a few times in some of the messages, sometimes in some pieces in the stories of the week, actually, about how different people get different reactions from coverage, especially in despair and in, needing pleas and helps in the eyeballs of the citizens. It is not a coincidence that young, blonde, white women get a lot of attention in missing persons cases, a lot of attention in the media, a lot of attention for people looking for them, as opposed to young, Black women. It just is. We're not even going to talk about men being missing because that's a whole nother genre. But essentially, if you're a woman of color of any sort and you go disappearing, people don't tend to understand what's going on in the process. We've had stories of soldiers and airmen who have disappeared, females on bases, who in most cases happen to be a minority. And so it's a local story to a point, but it doesn't gain those responses until somebody finds a body. We had the story a few weeks ago about the young woman who was trafficked, and that's the only way to say it, basically trafficked inside of Camp Pendleton. And I don't have the picture in front of me, but I'm almost in the understanding that the young lady was Latina. Maybe I'm wrong, then maybe just pulling it out of thin air. I'm pretty sure that there were issues, to include the fact that we do know she had a learning disability and did not quite understand what was going on. This woman, Carlee Russell, found a way to gain the attention of the outer folks, gain attention of the media, gain people into a rally to find this young woman and this toddler because we were concerned. It was so out there, so odd, so just not exactly something you expect to see or hear in this case, that people wanted to know the answers and people wanted to have some resolution of safety for this young baby and this young lady. And she ruined it for all of us. The resources wasted, the time and energy and the thoughts and prayers sent out, all going nowhere. Now, that's a problem. What exactly is Carlee's problem? We don't really know, or I don't really know. There's only so much coverage I can take in a day going forward. That's why we produce these things the way we do, based off of the stories we have from our various different places that we aggregate them from and what's available at the time. A lot of stories we get, the links we get to, by the time we talk about them, they're literally yesterday's news. And so the updates are not what we present. We present the fact that it was there. So we don't know the true behind the scenes of the life of Carlee Russell. We do know there was an interview with, I believe, the Today Show with her parents, who sort of talked about what was going on and what's going down and how that went through. I've not viewed that full interview. I've not viewed many things from the family friends going on, knowing that her boyfriend up front said, yeah, she was kidnapped. One thing that seems like it's pretty obvious that there wasn't a kidnapping, or was not a real kidnapping, if maybe it was a fake one to extort or whatever. Who knows at this point, because no one's telling us yet. What we do know is that whatever attention this woman was seeking, this is not what she was looking for. So if there is an issue of mental health, is an issue of some sort of overt need to be loved, have attention, be seen, we hope that comes to some sort of fruition. We hope she gets that. Unfortunately, she also broke a half dozen laws in the process and used up a lot of resources that must be paid back. And that whole sort of thing must be done. That restitution must be had in some way, or the whole system is just broken and stupid and bad, which the system is broken and stupid and bad, but that's not why it's broken, stupid, and bad. Someone here exploiting that for whatever reasons and not explaining what's going on. From the standpoint of mental health, we talk about this often. Actually, we talked about this in the weekly wrap-up, because the 988 service is a year old and they're talking about how it saved lives. If she would have talked to somebody, talked out whatever her actual issues were, maybe we would not be talking about her today. Maybe she won't be a footnote into the world of history going forward, especially in Alabama, around the world at this point. At some point, some other crazy will take over this crazy. But near her community, around her family, this is something that's going to last for a generation or two as they talk about this lady and what she did. We would not, we don't wish that on anybody, any family, to put themselves into something like this. And she did it willingly, although I guess whatever she wanted to get out of it, the willing part is still sort of to be determined. Now, the police response to this was amazing. It was great. This is what police are supposed to do in all cases, and stepping up to look for a missing toddler and a young woman who they didn't know on the phone call was who she was great. The fact that they put this information out there quickly was great. Maybe it was more along the lines of figuring out who the toddler was. Who knows? There may be other ulterior motives, but they did all they could do for this. And when she just showed up at home on Saturday night and they started digging through some of the details, they felt used and stupid. As much grief as I do give for police officers who are doing bad stuff, because not all are great. I have some great friends who are police officers. I have a cousin who is a police officer in Atlanta who, puts his life on the line for all the crazy out there. There are plenty of folks out there who just aren't good at their job, or think they can be better at their job by being a bit more heavy-handed in their job. Thank you so much for the police for doing what they did on this one. This is one instance of good that came through. We'll see what happens going forward, and if any goodwill or ill will be put out for this one. So don't give up on your police force just yet, especially on a case like this, because they actually did well. How they conduct the investigation and whatever punishment comes down for Carlee Russell, we'll have to kind of play that by ear as it works itself out. On the grand stage of how the media covers things, I've already mentioned that blonde, blue-eyed, young white women get lots of attention for these things. 48 Hours and true crime mystery type stuff, all filled with these types of stories. But we're starting to get more stories where people are looking more into the actual incident because it's so weird and so outlandish and so willingness to pull in the people for a good story, than just the makeup, the literal racial makeup of the person being lost. People are caring, unfortunately, more about the gruesome story, which is great in a sense that it's, colorblind in most cases, than the color of the person that the story is actually portraying, which is good. Problem is, it's still, if it bleeds, it leads. Still watching for very bad things to happen to care for stuff. We should care about more news stories that cover better things for all people. Kumbaya, all that great stuff. And we can get there, maybe. But we also have to get better at all the things we're looking at. We have to stop being so divided in theory and in reality and sort of take a look at other people from their perspective. And if not understand that they have a different perspective and they can see things differently from their experience. Even if you don't know their experience, don't understand their experience, or can't even fathom how someone can have some sort of experience. There are people out there that you're wandering around through every single day that have gone through so much trauma that you can't tell because they have a smile on their face and they're very productive, but that trauma either fuels them to keep going forward or they fight so hard to avoid it so it doesn't bring them down. I'm not sure what Carlee Russell was dealing with. I don't necessarily need to know from a nosy person standpoint, but I need to know because I need resolution for this story. I personally was invested because I saw it, I read it, I used it for my headlines for my morning news show, and we got people into it. And now we got it was a hoax. But it's a little bigger than that. Unfortunately, this one can't just go away. Unfortunately, we have to have the reasons behind this. Unfortunately, we have to have something to pin a crime on so we can end this thing going forward. That's the really sad thing about this story and picking up with this is we can't let it go. We literally can't let it go. We do all these stories. I produce all these stories and talk about Harry and Meghan as a point of contention. That's something to draw in eyeballs because people can't let them go. We brought up the divorce for Sofia Vergara this weekend. Had a couple updates on that one when it's just simply two famous people got divorced. And then, of course, the rumor mill started popping up with stuff. We put it in there because we are, we run by eyeballs and clicks and things like that. And we had to do that. This is a story that was extremely clickable. It was the number 2 story of the week by leaps and bounds. And we put it out there because it was salacious, because it was just traumatic, because it would bring people in. And unfortunately, it was a bad story to pick because in the reality, it was all a lie. Or it seems like it's a lie. Until she tells us otherwise, we got a liar on our hands. We will definitely keep an eye on this one. We'll definitely keep an eye on what's going on going forward. We're sending thoughts and prayers and much, much, much positive energy to people who have missing persons in their lives that need to be found, that need some resolution, that have not been cleared yet because the time was taken away from those investigations to find this woman. We have thoughts and prayers and positive thoughts and positive energy going out to Carlee Russell because she's going to need it. Her and her family are going to need a whole lot for a whole lot of time because they're just at the beginning of this thing. This thing's going to go for a while till they get some resolution, until there's some sort of charge or whatnot, and for years to come. They're not living this one down. I can't fathom any good guy situation for the end of this one. And we're going to send positive thoughts and positive energy to us. Because even though we will continue to post salacious, eyeball-catching, clickbait stories, we need to be better about what we do with eyeball-catching, clickbaity stories. I do as a journalist, if you will, and y'all do as people who are engaging. We're trying to get the most stories so you're a well-rounded person so you understand what's going on. So that's the whole point of what we're doing, what we do for the Conversation Project. But yes, there are times when, all of us can do better in what we're looking for and looking to come upon. And that is that for the week. This has been the Story of the Week podcast. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne. Thank you so much for being with us for this podcast, which is, we say, the supplement to the weekly wrap-up, the top 10 stories a week. That supplements the daily show, Monday through Friday, the things you might have heard, a morning news update that's produced every weekday morning at 6:50 a.m. on Central Time. You see it on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and of course it lives forever in the ether of the internet, in those video forms, and of course in the audio podcast you can find links to at our website. This is theconversationproject.com. You can also get the newsletter version of this. Subscribe to that so you get around 6:50 in the morning the links to the actual stories. Sometimes before we're done talking, because we go a little long, and go deeper into detail on the stories we're talking about. So you get a quick hit to get into those stories of the day. And of course, a newsletter that comes out for the weekly wrap up as well. Stop by our website and visit us and tell us how we're doing. Email us as well at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. If you think we're doing fairly good, we ask you to stop by our sponsors page and our partnerships page. Sponsors page allows you to see some sponsors we're attached to. All those sponsors are affiliate links. We're telling you that up front. So they don't pay us up front. They pay us for the sales we get from them. If you visit them and buy something, it costs you nothing extra. We get a little finder's fee in our pockets to keep things going. If you think we're doing good work, our partnerships page allows you to partner with us directly to help us get things going. We do not turn down any sort of money here. So there's various different links, various ways for you to reach out to us. And of course, we're looking for your input. So make sure you're following us on the feed so we know what stories to talk about, emailing us or replying to stories and links so that we know what we're doing well and not so well. And as I always say at the end of these things, staying limber, staying hydrated, and staying on task. That is 3 things I'm asking you to do is to take care of yourself. The selfish version is you're a listener to my stuff. You're a watcher of my stuff. I want you here for all the eyeballs and the ears to get those clicks and keep this thing going. But there are people around you that need you. And there are people around you that you don't know that need you. And there are people around you that you know that think they don't need you, but they kind of need you. So we all need you to do what you can to be the best you can. With that, we're going to wrap up this podcast for this week. What story will we talk about? What story will I ramble on about next week? Well, you'll find out by, of course, sticking around for things you might have heard every single weekday morning, listening to the weekly wrap up, which gives us the top 10 stories per your true engagement. And then we'll pick one story from that batch to give you for the story of the week. I'm Jay Cleveland Payne. Thank you so much for listening and contributing.